Casey. Welcome to This Is Lit.
Mama's back, bitches!
Cheers.
Cheers!
Welcome to This Is Lit, a podcast where we drink and talk about our favorite books. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Casey.
So raise a glass and let's get started.
All right, Liz, what are you drinking today?
Well, it is our old standby and favorite.
Portada, 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 tada, tada, portada, portada. Wow. Yeah, we're drinking
We're
portada today
hilarious.
because March is
Vampire Month!
So our first vampire of the month is the lesbian vampire Carmilla.
Lesbi-Vampires.
Now, Carmilla is an old novel. I was going to look this up. I should have had it ready.
It predates Dracula.
I got this. Hang on.
I'd also like to say that all four of us are drinking today because my two girls are also here and Captain Casey is feeding one of them while I'm feeding the other.
Yes.
But don't worry, they are drinking milk.
So Carmilla was written in 1872.
Yes.
Actually, the same year as the next book that we will be reading is set.
Yes.
It's a Gothic novella, and it's by Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu.
Who was Scottish?
Irish.
Irish. My mistake.
Yeah, it
I'm going to be
predates
gutted.
Dracula by 26 years. And
Fun fact, did you know that Coca-Cola was invented before these two novels came out, so it is canon that they could have a Coke.
what the fuck?
Do not leave Liz alone with a computer and nothing to do for a month.
That's valid. So, Carmilla is a novella, so it's fairly short.
Yes.
And
It's real quick.
it is about a young girl named Lucy and her father and a guest that they have to come visit them at their estate. They live in...
Lucy?
Huh?
Is it Lucy?
Mhm.
I thought it was Laura.
You're right, it's Laura. Yeah, sorry.
Lucy is from Dracula.
Dracula, yeah. I got my L's wrong, my L vampires wrong.
The L vampires.
So Laura is a young woman who lives in Romania? I don't think they specify. It's like
No, they
a
don't.
vaguely Eastern European country.
With mountains.
With mountains. So Romania, perhaps. The Carpathians are in Romania, so that's what I'm going to go with.
Yeah, sure.
So they live in some vaguely Eastern European country in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Her and her father and her two governesses.
Yes.
And she doesn't
Did
seem...
they ever state how old Laura is in this book? She's a teenager, right?
She's probably 17 or 18.
Yeah.
And she doesn't really have much society
No.
because lives in the middle
She
of nowhere.
wants friends.
She wants friends. And her father is friends with a general, who has a younger daughter who's
Well,
planning
to
to
the
come to
general.
visit.
Yeah, sorry.
And so she's
And they end up not coming.
Yes, because the general's
Daughter.
niece. She's actually his
Her,
niece.
yeah.
He's raised her, but this is again a very common Gothic literature theme.
Yeah.
Is that like someone being raised by someone who's not their parents, but they're basically their child. So his niece dies very suddenly. She had taken ill. She had said she'd seen some phantasms, and then within a week she was dead.
Yeah.
And so he has postponed his trip, and Laura's pretty devastated by this.
Because she wanted a friend.
Because she wanted a
She
friend.
wanted a new
She's
friend.
lonely. She doesn't have much going on. And then there's a carriage crash.
Oh, no.
As she and her father are walking about the town, a carriage that is coming by turns over,
Oh.
and a woman pops out.
You make it sound like it's like a groundhog vampire.
This like middle-aged woman climbs out of the felled carriage, and the carriageman pulls out another woman, a younger woman about the same age as Laura,
Yes.
who is unconscious, and she's been injured in the crash, and she's unconscious. The woman says she's her mother, and that her daughter, she has to go immediately. She's in a rush. There's an emergency of some sort.
Here, you take care of my daughter. I'll be back in 3 months.
Can she stay with you? And so they say yes, and the daughter joins them. The daughter's name is Mircalla.
Yes.
And Mircalla joins them at their house,
Mm-hmm.
and she and Laura become very fast friends.
Yes, very fast friends, very close friends.
They're very close, the same age, they have a lot of the same interests and the same temperament, but Mircalla is prone to these weird fits
Weird fits.
of obsession,
Yes.
where she will get...
Especially with Laura.
Especially with Laura. She'll get very intensely attached to Laura and clutch at her hands and tell her that she's never loved anyone as much and defy God and, like, I would do anything for you. It makes Laura very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But usually she settles down again and everything's fine. They go on.
And Laura's
this.
like, well, that was weird, and moves on because she wants a friend.
So they go on like this, and nothing seems amiss, except for the
girls
in the town.
mysteriously dying in the town. Weird.
So girls in the town have started falling ill and dying.
Mm-hmm.
They say that they see something in their bed at night, or perhaps they feel something bite upon their chest.
Yeah.
And then within a week, they're dead.
Which is starting to bother Laura because she's having these dreams too.
Well, Laura had a dream like this many, many years ago.
Yeah, when she was a child.
When she was a child, she had a dream that a woman came and laid into bed with her and bit her while she was sleeping, and she yelled out and woke up, and everyone came. They searched the house. They locked the doors.
There was nothing.
There was nothing there. And Mircalla looks exactly like the girl from her dream.
Yes, she
And
does.
Mircalla tells her that she had a dream once that she woke up underneath the bed and she crawled out and found another girl on the bed and laid down with her. And then the other girl started screaming and she ran away because she was scared. And that girl looks just like Laura. So there's a weird thing going on here.
Mm-hmm.
And then these girls in the town are dying. And then Laura starts having
Laura starts having the dreams too.
the dreams too. The first one she has is that she gets bit by something in the nighttime.
Yes.
And she wakes up and
Which, if you consistently have dreams where you're bitten, those aren't dreams, honey. Have you learned nothing?
Those are fantasies.
Well, maybe.
Don't you want to eat your little chubby cheeked thing?
She may not.
She's DED dead. Hey, hello.
Hey, those used to be my initials.
Hello. 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 Can we try one more? Can you do 1 more ounce for me?
Can you do 1 more ounce for Mama and Captain Casey? I wish I could think of
Look at
something.
this. Look at this. She's like, no.
I refuse.
All right, sleepy.
I wish I could come up something with you like Cappenport.
Captain Port.
But Captain and Casey start with the
I see
same
a
thing.
smile there. Do you see that little smile?
Casey.
Hmm.
That doesn't work.
Cece.
Cece? I like Cece. They have Dee Dee.
This baby is unconscious.
Yes, she is. Don't touch her.
She's like, no. No more.
Charlotte's about there. Foxy Queen. Alright, where were we? Dreams.
Dreams. Dreams.
Sweet dreams
Daddy.
are made of these. Yep. You love me and you know it, you missed me.
So she starts having these dreams, disturbing the whole household, screaming, waking up at the nighttime. Everybody's kind of concerned.
Except for Mircalla. Laura is also having these dreams, and so it's like, it's getting weird, folks. Okay. This is like what it's like at nighttime. Every 5 minutes, you don't want mommy to do what she needs to do.
So Mircalla has some interesting habits. She tends to sleep into the late afternoon
Yes.
before getting up. Although she has some sort of unspecified illness
That prevents her from waking early.
that makes her tired and pale and drawn and blah 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 blah. And like at the time,
It's a blood condition.
at the time, I'm sure it was very like if you were reading this when it was a
Yeah.
new novel, you were like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Very strange and mysterious, but
I thought my joke was funny.
it was great. I loved it. I'm sorry I'm drunk. Like at the time, like reading it now, you're just like, a bitch a vampire.
Bitch a vampire.
This bitch a vampire.
Lesbi-Vampires.
But at the time, I'm sure people were like, interesting mystery.
Oh,
What could
no,
be going on?
What? Kind of like Dracula. It's like the title is a spoiler in and of itself.
Yeah, nowadays, like we talked about that when we read Dracula. We talked
Yeah.
about how it's like, yeah, you know that he's gonna go stay in this castle that
Yeah.
belongs to a vampire.
The second most infamous vampire next to Dracula is Carmilla.
Yeah, Carmilla was one of the first vampire novels. The vampire itself
Yeah.
was probably the first, I think, which is, who
Yeah.
wrote that? Was that,
You should have asked me when I was sober.
is John William Polidori, right? Polidori, yeah.
That sounds right.
Yeah, that was 1816. And you know what that was? John William Polidori was at a dinner party.
Ooh.
And the other guests at the dinner party were like, let's have a writing competition. We all have to write a scary story.
Isn't this where Frankenstein came from
It
as
is.
well?
It is, yes. Yes, Mary Shelley, Lord Byron, and Percy Bysshe Shelley
Lord fucking Byron.
were all writing stories.
Sorry, girls, don't listen to your mother.
And John William Polidori was the fourth guest at this party. He wrote The Vampire, which is a short prose fiction that is viewed as the like the progenitor of the romantic vampire genre. So we have Polidori to thank for Twilight.
And the book we're reading next.
The beautiful. Yes. But at any rate, Carmilla is the first one that was really like took a long time and like went into the detail of like they sleep during the day, they're very pale.
Yeah.
They don't like the sound of worship music.
No, definitely not.
They have the big thing with vampires, the obsessive tendencies.
Yeah.
And I feel like modern vampire books, I was thinking about this, modern vampire books tend to still give vampires obsessive tendencies.
But it's like a romance.
Well, but they don't even acknowledge it. They don't really necessarily acknowledge it so much as something that vampires experience.
Yeah.
It's just like he's a vampire and he's obsessed with her. It's not like he's obsessed with her because
Twilight.
Right. But the fact of the matter is, like, obsessive tendencies towards other beings is part of a vampire's character traits. They just tend to obsess over things more frequently than humans.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting.
Well, are they obsessing because it's a romantic love, or are they obsessing because it's their food source and they will literally die?
No, I don't know. It's just a very like intense interest. Like that is a canonical, and we see that with Carmilla here, because Mircalla she will sometimes become absolutely overcome with her feelings for Laura, and she'll clutch her hands and she'll tell her how much she'd love her, that she'd burn the world for her. All
and
this
it doesn't make
crazy
Laura
stuff.
feel very awkward.
It makes Laura very uncomfortable. Like first off, because homosexual love at that time was not looked upon positively, and secondly, because that kind of intense affection or attention from anybody would be uncomfortable, especially if you hadn't asked for it.
Because I was going to say, if that situation happened to Laura and it was a man who was saying that to her, she'd be like, run!
Yeah, if that were happening with a man, or if it was modern, you'd get a fucking
restraining order.
Yeah. So it's very interesting to see this play out as in the same context as Dracula, where it's like we know from the very beginning of the novel, we know Mircalla is a vampire.
Yeah.
And that she's preying on the village, and she's going to start preying on Laura soon.
Yeah.
But for the reader who might have been reading it when it was contemporary, I wonder how much of it was a surprise, how much of it was a shock.
Let's go back in time and ask somebody.
I wish we could. You tell me when you get that time travel machine, and then you can give me half of the money for it.
It's probably going to be the TARDIS, and it will be the 10th Doctor. Yes. David Tennant. Moving on.
So, fun. I hate it.
Said the ginger.
So, Mircalla sleeps through all of these kerfuffles.
There's a major kerfuffle.
There's a major kerfuffle, which is that Laura wakes up and she finds Mircalla standing at the foot of her bed, covered in blood.
Yes. And I love you, and if you did that, I'd be like, Casey, is there something you need to tell me? Don't make that face.
No. So she screams. Everybody
As
comes
she should.
running. Mircalla's gone.
Yeah.
Not just from the room, from her own room.
Yes. She's just poof, gone.
They
Finished,
can't find
disappeared.
Mircalla anywhere. They search the grounds. They search the house. They search the village. They cannot find her. And it's very unsettling. And then the next day, she is in the drawing room next to her bedroom. And she says, I don't know what happened. I don't remember anything.
And nobody believes her. Like, they should.
They think that she's sleepwalking.
Yeah. Sleepwalking. Covered in blood. Because that's normal.
Well, they don't find any blood on her when they find her. She's clean. So it's very confusing because Laura's like, I saw her covered in blood. And everybody's like, well, yeah, I see her covered in blood.
Yeah, but that was how many hours later? There are these things called baths.
So it's all very confusing and very unsettling.
To quote Lizzie Bennett, excuse me, but one knows exactly what to think. But they finally do get the visit from the general that was promised.
Well, they actually run into him on accident.
Yeah.
They know he's coming. He should be there in the next day. But in the meantime, they decide to go visit the town over.
Yes.
So for Laura's mother, who has passed away, was a member of a family, the Karnstein family.
Yes.
She was a distant relative of the Karnsteins. And there is a ruined village where the Karnsteins used to live. And Laura wants to go visit it. So she and her father go, and they tell the governesses to come behind with Mircalla when she wakens. Because it's, early in the day. And they go, and they find the general in this ruined village. And he's looking for the grave of someone called Carmilla. Carmilla Karnstein. Because it turns out that he has discovered that what happened to his daughter was that she was the victim of a vampire.
Bum, bum, bum.
There had been a young woman who had come to stay with them. They had met at a masquerade ball, actually.
Yes.
He had met her mother, and her mother had begged him to take her daughter for a couple of months, and then she would come back
Because there was
for
an
her.
emergency, and she would come back for her. Sound familiar?
And so he had agreed to it. The girl had joined them. Carmilla had joined them at their house.
They had gotten very close and become
The
very
two girls
good
had
friends.
become very good friends. And then the general's daughter started having these nightmares and these dreams. And very soon after, she passed away. And he knows that Carmilla is the one who's done this, and that vampires must come back to their own tomb. So he is here to find Carmilla Karnstein's tomb and destroy the Revenant once and for all.
Yes.
Now, this book also uses some real oldie school terms for vampires. Revenant, Oupire.
Yeah.
Older terms for vampires, a shade.
Yeah.
Things like that. But it is a pretty traditional vampire that we're dealing with here. And
Very
everyone
traditional
knows
vampire.
that if you stake a vampire through the heart,
Cut off its head,
cut off its head, and put a garlic bulb in its mouth,
it won't come back.
it cannot come back. So that is what the general plans to do, but they cannot find
They cannot find her tomb.
Carmilla's grave because it was moved and hidden at some point.
Yes.
According to
Because of one of Carmilla's lovers.
Yes, because of one of Carmilla's lovers. And so
There's something about that word lovers that's just like so old worldy that just, I don't know. We should use the word lovers more often in modern society. Lovers.
So
It's better
About-
than side chick.
about this time, the governesses and Mircalla roll up, and as soon as the general sees her, he grabs up one of the groundskeeper's axes and attacks her
Yes.
because he recognizes her as Carmilla.
Of course.
She flees.
Because he's not stupid.
She flees, and
Mhm.
they are all very upset, but they are able to find out from the groundskeeper the exact location of her grave, and the next day, during the day, they come back and they kill her.
Yeah.
They open the grave, and sure enough, Carmilla is in there, and so Laura is saved.
Yes.
Laura survives the vampire attack. It's the
And like her dad takes her to Italy to help her heal from her trauma,
Recover.
and she never really does.
No, she's got nightmares about it, and she thinks she sees Carmilla everywhere, and she tells the story in hopes that it will help her, but really she's
And will
never
help somebody else.
and will help somebody else in the future.
But she never recovers from her.
Not really, no. It's interesting because this book
And that's the whole book.
it's
30 minutes in.
it's interesting because this book
It's
it's a
short.
novella,
Yeah.
so it's short. It's only about 200 pages, but it also doesn't follow like a exposition, rising action, climax,
it doesn't.
falling action, resolution situation. There's really no major climax. in the
No,
book.
like even in Dracula, there was a big kind of standoff at the end, and then at
Right.
the end of
but like
Carmilla, there's
like if
just
Carmilla had
chop,
been
chop,
written in a
done.
more modern time, it would have been she would have escaped.
Yeah.
And she might have come back and attacked them later.
Yeah.
like,
If this was pitched to a movie studio, someone would be like, "But when do they fight the vampire?"
yeah, because they don't like she runs away, and then
Yeah.
because she's a vampire, she has to go back to her tomb during the day.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, they just wait until the next morning, but she doesn't come attack them in the night and try to get them out of her way before they can kill her. It's just the changes, the difference in writing.
Yeah,
Again, this book was written in 1872, a very, very different time. And so that sort of plot schematic didn't necessarily exist at the time.
No.
Again, Dracula was written almost 30 years later.
Yeah, that's true. It was. And it was a major influence for Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we see, like, the common signs, like the sleeps during the day, and the
Obsessive
personality,
personality.
the excessive personality, the aversion to holy symbols or holy music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which I have a question with vampires. If they are all, like, warded off by holy symbols, most of the time we see crosses and stuff, would they be warded off by, like, the Star of David?
Yes.
Okay, good.
The thing about vampires...
I just want to make sure it works on all religions.
The thing about vampires is, from what I understand, it's not so much the holy symbol itself.
It's the belief
It's the belief behind it. So it's not like...
Like in Practical Magic.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't necessarily have a religion he believes in, but he believes in a sheriff badge.
Right.
Kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily so much of, like, vampires are Christian and they believe in the Christian God.
Yeah, but most often we see it associated with Christian theology.
But yeah, I think if you were to wield an ohm at a vampire or a Star of David.
And you truly believed in it.
Or the Quran, like, yeah.
In the Patricia Briggs Mercy Thompson series, they do have vampires, and the main character, Mercy Thompson, she doesn't have a cross she wears, but she has, like, a lamb charm, just be it, like, a symbol of her faith, because Jesus was the Lamb of God kind of a thing. And it works!
Now, mind you, I don't think that if a person who was Christian tried to use a Jewish symbol or an Islamic symbol, I don't think it would work. I think it has to be something you believe in.
Yeah.
Which I don't know what that means for people who are agnostic or atheists.
Well, it could be kind of like the sheriff badge situation, where it's like you don't necessarily need to believe in the god, but you need to believe in the symbol that you wield.
Maybe. I don't know. But Carmilla
curious.
Carmilla was, yes, it was a huge influence for Dracula. It was also, in the thing about Gothic novels that's interesting is they can get away with shit that a lot of other people can't get away with. So in Gothic novels, you see a lot of things like, you see homosexual relationships.
Yeah.
You see incest relationships more frequently. There was actually a really good essay somebody wrote about Supernatural as a Gothic novel and why it's okay for the Winchester brothers to be closer than is generally appropriate for brothers. It's because the genre allows it. Because Gothic novels have always been kind of allowed to do those things because they're portraying a horror, right?
Yeah.
So Carmilla is also some early, like, lesbian representation in a very vague and sort of intangible way.
As someone who is on the queer spectrum, how do you feel about the representation of this book? Because as a straight woman, I feel like I have an opinion about it, but I also feel like it's a very biased opinion.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because vampires are, again, like the vampire, John Polidori, 1816. It kind of was the starting point of vampires as a romantic Gothic fiction.
Yes.
Before that, like, vampires in, spoken word stories, like, passed down from generation to generation, and in, like, short stories and things like that told around the campfire. Like, vampires existed in fiction before John Polidori wrote that novel. But that was the first time it was, like, ever considered as, like, but what about a vampire in a more romantic sense? Both lowercase and capital R.
Yeah.
So, like, putting vampires into, like, a relationship context has been happening since the 1800s, but 9 times out of 10, what you're seeing is a heterosexual. Dracula's obsessed with Lucy.
Yeah.
And Mina, but never with, any of the men. Like, you see Edward is obsessed with Bella. Even in modern, it's a man and a woman, and there's and usually the man is the vampire.
Usually.
And the woman is the swooning,
swooning damsel.
Swooning damsel. And so Carmilla is interesting in the sense that you've got a female vampire.
Yeah.
And she only ever goes after women. Like, not just Laura and General's daughter, but also the women in the villages.
Yeah, she goes out for women. So I was wondering, especially after listening to that last episode, how you felt about the villainess being genderqueer. or just
Right.
queer. Because I know that is a trope that has kind of been overused, where it's like the lesbian or the bisexual character or the gay character.
Well, that's
is
the
villain.
interesting thing, right? Is because this is an older novel,
Yeah.
1872, right?
Mm-hmm.
So not only are we looking at the advent of like lesbian in culture, we're also looking at the advent of the predatory lesbian.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't like a story that's falling into the trope of the predatory lesbian. This is a story that is creating the trope
Yeah.
to be used later.
Which I don't think is necessarily a good thing. I don't like that trope.
No, it's not a good thing. But to me, it's like,
I mean, Carmilla
can't-
is literally a predatory lesbian.
to me, I cannot apply the same standards to contemporary novels and classical novels.
Okay.
Like, yes, if someone were to write Carmilla today, I'd be like,
That's,
hey,
yeah, that's not
don't.
cool. It's horribly insensitive. But back then too, it was very much a, being, like even, like I found out in Australia, it was illegal to be gay or lesbian until 1997. People.
Sodomy was not decriminalized in Texas until 1998.
Way to go, Texas. And
Yeah,
that was sarcasm, by the way.
yeah, no, it's
Texas.
yeah. So like, obviously, like, it's not a good trope, but in this context, I'm looking at it less as like, you shouldn't have written that, because again, it's a classical novel. I can't look at it through a modern lens. And on the other hand, it's interesting from a literary history point of view, from the point of view of someone who studies the history of
This
novels.
is the creation of the
tropes.
trope that we don't
Like,
like.
here's how this trope started.
Yeah.
Like, that's interesting. Whether the trope is good or bad, knowing how it started
And
is
that
interesting
kind of
information.
predatory, bisexual, lesbian, gay trope is very prevalent in vampire novels.
Yes.
Especially modern ones.
Anne Rice.
And fucking Rice.
Anne Rice is, I think Anne Rice is, I believe she's a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And she is, of course, you probably know, very adamant against fan fiction.
Yeah.
Specifically because
Which I think it's only appropriate that she had a gay son.
a lot of people ship her Lestat.
Yeah, because that's Lestat. Like,
Because
the first time I read that book, it never occurred to me that Lestat was anything other than that.
well, it's not just Lestat. It's like, especially the book itself is that way, but the movies.
Oh, the movie. Tom Cruise played him hella gay.
Yeah, Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
Because he's Luis, right? Luis
Yeah,
Capone.
yeah. That's a hella gay book.
Like,
And a hella gay movie.
yeah. So they spend time together, and it's like, it's very homoerotic.
They
even
raise a child together.
even if she didn't mean for it to be homoerotic, it is in fact very homoerotic.
Yes, it is.
And so, like, and again, it's a gothic novel. People
Right.
see that stuff in there, like incest, homosexuality, other things, that people maybe would be unhappy with. Like, you can explore them in gothic novels. That's kind of part of the point of gothic novels. And vampires themselves, there's a whole conversation to be had about horror in a community. So whenever a certain type of horror is popular, you can kind of tell what the fears of a
we've
society
discussed this
are.
before, where it's like zombies were commercialism and
capitalism.
vampires were foreign
Immigration.
and
like people who are different, the
Yeah.
unknown.
like we're currently living through the middle of a pandemic, so zombies have kind of fallen out of favor at the moment.
So vampires have always been meant to represent
The foreign.
something different, or something that is quote unquote out of the ordinary.
And a lot of people who are in the LGBTQ plus community identify as such. Which, because they are kind of, I can't speak to this personally, you probably can a lot better than I can, but I'm assuming there's feelings of just otherness and isolation and...
Yeah, engendered by society and engendered by the communities, but like the otherness of vampires has always been very appealing to the queer community.
Yeah.
So like Carmilla instead of becoming something that we held up and was like, don't do this, my favorite thing that I've seen happen with Carmilla is a reclaiming. There is an online series of Carmilla. So
it was done by the Vlogbrothers, though, wasn't it? It was the same people who did the Lesbi-Vampires Diaries.
Yeah. So
and I've read those or watched those.
It's a reframing of Carmilla, where Carmilla is in fact a vampire. She's at university, and her roommate is Laura, and her mother is the one who runs the school. And so it's her protecting Laura from her mother, her trying to keep her secret as a vampire, all the while falling in love with Laura.
It's kind of like the reclaiming of the Medusa symbol.
It's very, very similar to that. And so it's actually very interesting because Carmilla
So this is a book
is a heroine
Yeah.
in the web series. And so it's like, to me, it seems like a lot of the people involved with the actresses and stuff were queer. And so to me, it seemed like that is a very blatant reclaiming of these characters. And like, even outside of that, a lot of queers will tell you, oh yeah, Carmilla is the lesbian vampire novel. Like, in a positive light.
Yeah.
Not because a predatory lesbian is good, but because that's a very, very early case of a lesbian in a book.
I definitely wanted to talk to you about that because I am not a queer person, but you are. So
Right.
I'm like, I feel like I have no right having any kind of opinion about this.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think that, obviously, like, I would not want to see a Carmilla written in the 21st century.
No.
But the way that Carmilla has been reclaimed by the community, I think, is very fun. And I also think it's important for us to know where those tropes come from. Because if you don't know where something comes from or why it exists, how are you supposed to counter it? So knowing that people see vampires as other, and then comparing that other to real, quote-unquote, others, like the queer community, it makes a very logical jump for a lot of people. And that's why it was very easy for the author of this novella to be like, she's a lesbian. Even though he never explicitly said there's not like a lesbian sex scene, she doesn't confess her love to Laura, it's still very, very clear that she loves her and that she's obsessed with her in a way that is not traditional for a woman to feel about another woman.
Yeah. But I'm glad that there's kind of a reclaiming of this, kind of like I said with the Medusa symbol, because if you know anything about the story of Medusa, Medusa originally was a high priestess for Athena's temple, and Neptune was like, she's so gorgeous, I must have her, and took her in the temple. And the original story was that Athena, in anger, turned her into this monster where if you looked at her, you would turn to stone and she had the snake hair. But in recent years, I've seen the reclaiming where
Athena gave her that ability to protect herself.
Yeah, to protect herself from other men like Poseidon and Neptune, whichever version you ascribe to. And so, like, even like the brothel houses had Medusa's head over the door to protect them. Are you trying to find the difference between my children?
What?
You looked at both of them strangely.
I was looking at their noses.
Oh, yeah, they have Paul's nose.
Well, hers is a little more. It's got a little more of a swoop than hers does. Sorry, I got distracted. Yeah, so
Distracting.
it's very similar. It's a very similar vibe between
Because
Carmilla
I think
and
there's
Medusa.
something to be said for the only queer character in the novel being also the most powerful one.
Yeah, there definitely is. And like, from what I know, from my experience, my personal experiences and in conversations online, most queer people don't mind being compared to a vampire. Like, they'll take it. Like, they're like, yeah,
really?
that's
Kinsey?
dope.
You don't mind being compared to a vampire?
That's dope.
Or a demon?
Or a demon. Well, because it's like rather than fight the assignations that other people have given us, we just make them our own. That's the entire queer experience.
Well, and that's the point of literature, is to take these stories and make them your own.
Yeah, so I think, I really enjoy Carmilla. I think that it's a very nice, quick read, and I think
it's a quick read.
And I think it's cool to
not bad.
have
And
that
it's
history,
written
both
nicely.
for Gothic novels and for the queer community.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really enjoyed Carmilla. Like, I'd say I gave it, 3.5 bottles.
3.5? Yeah, I'd probably go 3.
Yeah, so it's, it's decent. It's a very quick read.
It is.
And it's a
super
little
quick.
unusual if you don't read a lot
I had it on Audible, and I finished it in an hour this morning while I was giving the babies their bottles. So.
And if you don't read stuff that was written before the turn of the century very often, it might take a little getting used to.
Yeah, it would.
Because a lot of those books are written addressing the audience directly. Yeah. Like, hello, I'm writing you this book to tell you this thing. And
or they're through letters to somebody else or something like that.
That was the
diary
style
entries. So. That was just the style because people thought it helped everyone else associate.
So yeah, if you're not familiar with it, it might throw you off. But overall, it's very nicely written.
Yeah.
Fun book. Again, kind of an odd, narrative pattern. No climax to speak of.
Yeah, no. I would say the climax is when you find out she is a vampire.
Yeah. I'd say if you want to have a Carmilla that's got less of that, predatory lesbian trope and more of a normal, rising action, climax, falling action situation, check out the web series. It's a lot of fun.
Do you remember what it's called? Or is
it's just called Carmilla.
Yeah.
If you search it on YouTube, you should be able to find it.
And if you have trouble, it's done by the same people who do the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which is a modern retelling of Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah.
Which is excellent. So I highly recommend that one as well.
So if you enjoyed listening to this episode, give us a like on Facebook or whatever. We might be posting these on YouTube now. We're trying some new stuff.
Yeah, we're trying some new stuff.
So work with us. We're also working with babies now. So.
Yeah, we're also working with little ones.
Also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can get this podcast on SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts.
Yes, and we do have a Patreon if you're feeling exceptionally generous. Casey is getting married in less than 100 days. Woo! And I just brought forth 2 human beings into the world.
All right.
Send help.
Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you in the next episode. It's The Beautiful by Renee Day. It is another vampire novel, so we'll see you then.
It's Vampire Month. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. For more information, visit us at litliteraturepodcast.com or check out our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages. And remember, too much work and no vacation deserves at least a small libation. Cheers!